Hey guys, welcome back to Best Association. I'm James, and today's topic is the top 5 industries that are gaining during COVID-19 in Indonesia. Again, the content is researched and presented by the Research and Development team consisting of Hadassah, David, and Shaq. So let's all thank them for this. And without further ado, the time is yours, Hadassah.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our video from Best Association. And today we're going to discuss the industries that are actually gaining during COVID-19 in Indonesia. So, in our last video, we discussed the industries that were negatively impacted. We saw that the oil industry was badly hurt. And we also saw that the WTI crude oil reached a price of negative $37 on April 20th, 2020. Other than that, we also saw many unemployment and bankruptcy. Up to July 23, 2020, 1.4 million Americans filed for jobless claims. Other than that, small, medium, and even large companies filed for bankruptcies in 2020. In Indonesia itself, the industries that suffered the heaviest losses are first, air transport, second, crops, third, machines and equipments, fourth, furniture, and lastly, fifth, rail transport. As it can be seen here, they were really badly hurt. But today we want to discuss about the top 5 industries that are actually growing during COVID-19. So let's start. The fifth industry that had the most growth during COVID-19 is actually maritime transport. Maritime transport grew 5.93% in the first quarter of 2020 relative to the first quarter of 2019. The head of Badan Pusat Statistics, or Indonesia's Center for Statistics, Mr. Suharyanto, expressed that in March 2020, there was only a 3.78% decrease of passengers from March 2020 relative to March 2019. Therefore, he stated that maritime transport was not significantly affected by COVID-19. But other than that, packages that were being delivered had an increase of 6% in March 2020 relative to the previous month. These packages equals to 25.5 tons of packages being delivered by sea, which is a lot of packages. Now, the fourth industry that has grown during COVID-19 is the metal mining industry. The metal mining industry experienced a 9.18% growth in the first quarter of 2020 relative to the first quarter of 2019. Despite this increase in growth, it can actually be seen that the demand for metals in the first quarter of 2020 has been decreasing. Metals such as aluminum, zinc, nickel, silver, tin, copper, and many more has actually been decreasing, which is reflected in the prices that has decreased. While the only metal that has increased in its prices and hence its demand is none other than gold. So why? What happened? What happened to demand for these metals? Well, for the metals that are not gold, the reason why they have decreased in prices is because the end products such as cars and construction sites, which needs a lot of metals, has been also decreasing. But other than that, it's actually also because the refineries around the world, especially in China, has been temporarily shut down because of COVID-19 and physical distancing. And so our winner is gold. In the first quarter of 2020, the prices of gold has increased by a positive of 2.8%. Well, it's because of the uncertainty that was posed by COVID-19. And it's also because of the political instability due to the trade war between the United States and China. Because of these factors, investors become highly uncertain of the dollar value and any other currency for that matter. And so they move on to real commodity, that is gold. And gold becomes somewhat of a safe haven for investors. Luckily enough for Indonesia, Indonesia is the 6th biggest gold producing countries in the world. In 2018 alone, Indonesia produced 119 tons of gold. And in the first quarter of 2020, one of Indonesia's biggest mining refineries named Antam had a revenue of 9.23 trillion rupiahs, 69% of which is all due to gold. What about the second quarter of 2020? Earlier we saw that the prices of gold in the second quarter of 2020 has increased significantly from that of the prices in the first quarter of 2020. It became $1,974.7 per ounce. But other than gold, another commodity, that is copper, has also increased in prices in the second quarter of 2020. It has even increased in prices that it's almost the same as it was in 2019. Tin has also increased in its prices in the second quarter of 2020 that it's almost the same as its prices were in 2019. So why? Why the sudden increase? Well, one of the biggest contributing factors is China's sudden increase in demand for tin. In July 2020 alone, China imported 5,800 tons of tin. Luckily enough for Indonesia, Indonesia happens to be the world's biggest producer of tin. In 2020 May, China imported 2,586 tons of tin from Indonesia. One of the reasons for this is actually a growing demand for semiconductors, which needs tin and copper, and so its prices will probably increase in the second quarter of 2020. This growing demand of semiconductor is actually also because of China's growing GDP in the second quarter of 2020, which has increased at a positive of 3.2% year-on-year. China's GDP has started to heal and started to grow again. The third industry that has grown the most during this pandemic is information and communications. Information and communication is actually a quite stable industry, but this year in the first quarter of 2020, it has a growth rate of 9.81% relative to the first quarter of 2019. The main factors of this is none other because of the work from home and the school from home policies, which has increased data traffic all around the world and of course also Indonesia. The second most growing industry during this pandemic is the medical and social services industry. The medical and social services industry experienced a 10.39% growth in the first quarter of 2020 relative to the first quarter of 2019. This is because, of course, of the pandemic, which needs hospital services and clinic services. But let's not mistake the medical and social services industry for the medicine industry. The medical services and social services industry had a much bigger increase in growth than the medicine industry. Now, last but not least, the industry that has grown the most during this pandemic is the financial and insurance services industry. So the financial services and insurance industry had a 10.67% growth in the first quarter of 2020 relative to the first quarter of 2019. Let's start with the insurance industry first. So insurance as a whole actually decreased by 7.51% year-on-year. Life insurance decreased by 13.8% year-on-year. You can see the difference that in 2019 it only decreased by 0.38% year-on-year, while general insurance increased by 3.65% year-on-year, but this is still lower than December 2019, where it increased by 15.65% year-on-year. This was expressed by the head of the Commissioner of Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, or the head of Indonesia's financial department, Mr. Rimbo Santoso, on Monday, 11th of May. So what happened to life insurance? Why is this great decrease happening? Well, the reason for that is actually because clients and agents must meet to have a physical signature specifically for the life insurance contract, while this cannot happen during COVID-19 with physical distancing. Other than that, we also have the stock markets and treasury bills In the first quarter of 2020, money taken out from the stock market and the treasury bills were 6.11 trillion rupiahs and 98.28 trillion rupiahs respectively. The stock market weakened by 37.49% YTD at a low of 3,937.6 rupiahs, while the treasury bills yield grew significantly by 95 basic points YTD, which was aiming to lure more investors, of course, but as it can be seen, money were taken out and, well, not a lot of investors invested again in the first quarter of 2020. Now for financial intermediaries such as banks, bank credit grew at a positive at 5.93% year-on-year, and investment credit grew by 10.29% year-on-year. This suggests that in the first quarter of 2020, many people, well, they began to borrow more. But risk-wise, non-performing loans and non-performing financing were kept low at a percentage of 2.79% and 2.66% respectively, which means, well, it's a good thing. However, as time goes by, bank credit was not liquidated by the banks. The head of the Board of Capital Investment said that many businessmen came to him and they expressed that their credit history was okay by the banks, but the bank did not execute anything. They just agreed on it, but they didn't do anything. So the problem was not actually about the money that was not in the banks, not about the liquidity, but it's actually because of the high uncertainty by the market and the weak aggregate demand. And so banks were reluctant to lend money to borrowers. And so governments began to give out regulations. The first regulation given out was the debt reconstructuring. The second one was bank credit subsidy for micro, small, and medium businesses. The third one is loan relaxation. This is all to help depositors and borrowers to strengthen their financial and economic activities during this pandemic. But what do you think? What do you think about these whole industries that we've been talking about just now? And what do you think about the regulations that the government has been giving out for the people? Are they really helpful? Could they really help people's economic activity grow? Please let us know on the comments below. Let us know your opinions and let us discuss together. We would also like to thank specific sources which helped us in making this video. That is the Badan Pusat Statistics, BBC, Business.com, CNBC, CNN, International Tin Association, Kontan.co.id, Merdeka.com, Trading Economics, The Guardian, US Global Investors, and the World Bank. So thank you for your attention, and that's it. Please subscribe and like our video if you have enjoyed it. We'll see you again on our next video.